Y'all, listen. If there is one thing I've learned, adversity does not build character. Adversity reveals character. I'm Barbie Bassett, and I invite you to join me and my friends, Therese, Apel, and Traci Lee, as we peel back those adversity layers to see what else is revealed.
Hey, everybody. I can't do it like Barbie, but y'all listen here. So I am your stand-in host today since Barbie had some other things she had to take care of. Of course, we have the fabulous Traci Lee with us, as always. And we have a very special guest today. You guys know who Ashley Jones is. Ashley Deadeye Jones is in the studio.
Hey, I'm so excited you're here.
I know, this is so exciting. We've been trying to figure out how to get this to happen for a while. So, Ashley, I know that almost everyone we have knows who you are, but give us a quick introduction for the people that aren't as familiar.
Okay. My name's Ashley Deadeye Jones. I was on History Channel from seasons 10 through 15, so I spent 6 years in reality TV. One of those years, I also did the Python show, Serpent Invasion, and an episode on Swamp Mysteries as well.
And that, to me, is the most incredible thing because, Ashley, for you guys that haven't watched it, Swamp People is pretty incredible too, but the Serpent Invasion just blew my mind because there she is on TV wrestling snakes that are bigger than anything I own, probably almost even my house. So tell us just right quick, tell us a little bit about how you got into doing that.
Well, it's a funny story. My dad and I got tags in Mississippi, which is unheard of. There's usually like 11,000 applicants and only like around 700 tags given, so not a real good chance of getting one. And me, my dad, my brother, my husband, everybody we knew put in for it. And I checked my email one day and I had congratulations, you've got a tag for Mississippi. I remember coming out of the office, holding the paper up, just screaming and yelling. I was so excited. Then I get on the phone and the guy's like, you picked the Jordan, our South Central zone, and that's not a very good zone. There's not a lot of big gators there. I was like, oh, man, well, can we still go? And he's like, yeah, we'll still go, but I don't want you to get your hopes up. So we get out there. We hunted night after night. We didn't see anything over 6 feet. And one of these nights we were out there and we saw what we thought was a gator, but he went down too quick, so we didn't get a good look. And the two guys that were with us started casting on him because in Mississippi you have to catch them with rod and reel. So they're casting on this gator, and one thinks he's got it, but he's like, no, it's not moving. It's a stump. So we actually tried to get the hook out of this gator. And all of a sudden, the boat just starts moving, and he's like, no, we got a gator on. The gator just doesn't even know he's hooked. That's just how resilient they are. He's just walking down the middle of the bank, but on the middle of the canal, but just on the bottom. So we reached around and got some more hooks in him, and then he realized he was hooked. Oh, my gosh, he put up a fight. I mean, just rolling and rolling. And we still at this time had no idea how big he was. He finally rolled till he got to the side of the boat, and it was longer than the boat. I mean, he was huge.
Yeah.
And he came up for air after not having air for so long, and it was just like a it was the scariest sound, but it also came out with like foam, and it was crazy. You could just see his breath, and it looked like a dinosaur for real. And so we get him all in the boat, and after that, we took a picture laying across the back of it, and one of the producers saw that on the show. Actually, Ronnie Adams, the guy that I hunted with before, they were looking for a female guest for the show, and he was like, do you want to come down and interview for the show? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And here I am.
The rest is history.
Yep.
So one of the things we want to talk about today, and this was kind of something that Traci came up with, because I think one thing that we have all struggled with is being in the public eye.
Yeah.
And kind of just this world where everybody knows who you are, everybody has their opinions of you. And there's a definite, for some of us, there are different ways that you have to be when you're in the public eye versus when you're not, which is not so different in many cases from being a Christian. You feel like there's a different way you're supposed to act until you come to a place where you just know who you are in Christ. Traci, talk about kind of what you said in our group text earlier, because there's so much that goes on, and people will say, "But you're a Christian."
Yeah, I think that's one thing that you find in any walk of life. You could be a mom, you could be a Sunday school teacher, you could be in the public eye like we are. And it's everybody watches you under a microscope, especially with social media. And people are always like, I thought you were a Christian and you're doing this. I thought you were a Christian. You said that word. I thought you were a Christian. You're struggling with that addiction. I thought you were a Christian. You're getting a divorce. And I think people put these unrealistic expectations under the title of what Christian is. I know I don't think of myself as judging other people, but I think I judged myself under that, if that makes sense.
Sure.
When you realize that you're struggling with something or that you're not behaving the way that is becoming to Christ in a certain area, you're like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can I not tackle this? Why can I not do it? I'm a Christian. I'm not supposed to do this. But we're also human. And I think Jesus did such a beautiful picture of God and man and modeled for us what it was supposed to be, and also took care of the fact that we cannot do that, you know. And when we were texting about this, I asked Ashley if she would be willing to share her journey through sobriety. I think just knowing what I know and watching you from afar,
Yeah.
and then getting to talk to you, you are such an inspiration about what you have done, where you have been. You do not shy away from anything. You're like, this is where I was. This is who I am. This is what's going on. And it's so refreshing, I think, for anybody who's going through anything that's like, oh, so I'm not alone. And you would said that you would be willing to kind of share some of that journey about the things that you went through, the things that you're feeling, where you were, where you're now, and how you got there.
Yeah. So I've been sober for 2 years and 2 months now, coming up on my 3rd month.
Did you ever
and
think you would do it?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew friends that did it, but that just was never even in my wheelhouse. I didn't want to quit.
Yeah.
You know, I was having fun,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And it was alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. It was alcohol.
Yeah.
How did you always struggle with it, or was it a problem that you just developed?
I like to drink a lot, you know, just all the time. And I think it really got bad when my dad passed away 4 years ago. So for 2 years there, it had gotten complete control of my life.
How did it get control of your life? Like, I'm sure your husband, your kids, they all kind of saw it. Did anybody call you out, or was it a decision that you just knew you needed to make?
People tried to talk to me about it, my friends, my real close friends, but a lot of my friends were doing the same thing. So it was hard for them to say anything, you know.
I think that's something
yeah.
that's we don't talk about enough as grown-ups, you know, is how the people that you have around you sometimes really can influence the way that you live. They say you're the sum of your 5 best friends, and I can look back through my life and I can see who my friends were and kind of how I was living. And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because right now I don't have any friends that are big drinkers. I used to drink like the world was ending. I loved to. And when you said like I was having fun, that's the way I felt about it too. It was like, no, I would never quit this. Like for me, I'm very much an introvert, almost even sometimes until the camera turns on. And so for me to be able to actually have a personality, drinking did that for me. You know, I had way more friends when I was drinking than when I'm not. And so I never thought that it would be something I would ever quit. And I haven't quit per se, but I just don't drink anymore. And so I get so inspired by your decision because I have kind of gotten out of it by attrition. I don't have friends that I go out with anymore, but you made the choice. And how do you just do, like, did you go cold turkey? Did you come off it? Like, how did you go about that?
Well, I'll tell y'all what happened. One night I had way too much to drink, and we have a little house apart from our house, and that's where I did a lot of the drinking, so the kids weren't around as much. But I went down there and I was by myself, and I didn't think there was any other way out. I didn't think quitting was an option. And I called my mom, and I told my mom that, you know, I didn't want to be here anymore if I had to continue living like this, because I hated what alcohol had turned me into. And and she came immediately, like she always does. And a friend of mine just so happened to message that night, and I messaged back and I asked her where, because she was sober too, and I asked her where she went, and she gave me a lady's number, and I went to a detox so that I could do it safely because I was so scared of having a seizure or all these things, and were just a lot of excuses too. But I went to a detox, and was I sober enough to finally realize what I was doing. And I read some letters from my kids. And I knew at that point that was all it was going to take for me to never want to drink again. And so I didn't stay the full time or anything. I went ahead and came home after 3 weeks, but that was all I needed, you know.
It's interesting that you say that. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. My mom was a big smoker when we were little kids, and my sister and I went to. It was when smoking was still mostly okay, you know. And my sister and I went to Vacation Bible School, and when they took prayer requests, we told the teacher that we wanted to pray that our mom would quit smoking because we heard it was bad for you. And the teacher told my mom, and my mom was like, I couldn't in any good conscience smoke anymore. And so she had to stop smoking because she didn't want us to worry all the time that she was going to die. And it's amazing what they always say, because of a great love, one is courageous. And that's your story.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah. But I think it's beautiful too that you read that from your children and they saw you here, and then they saw how incredibly strong and determined you were to be where you are now. What a great example that you've set, and not only for your family, but for those people that watch you, those people that have just seen you. And you've been very open on social media too, to post pictures of this is who I was.
Well, I didn't do it for a year because I was scared.
Yeah.
You know, could I handle the pressure of everybody knowing, you know, that there was a problem? And everybody's been showing so much support. I'm really glad I decided to do that.
Yeah. Ashley McBride is a singer too, country music singer, and she waited a year into her sobriety to do it. And she said the same thing. She said, I just didn't know if I could stick with it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to say anything until I had like a milestone moment. So that's congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You know, I was in intensive outpatient therapy for 10 weeks because of, now I had complex PTSD from a number of things, but primarily my job. And when I went and did all the diagnoses and whatnot, I had indicators of a lot of things, including alcoholism, but the biggest one was I had an eating disorder. So they put you in IOP along with that's an addiction. It's, you know, it's like that. So I did that. And it was the same thing. My therapist at one point, I was like, I want to document this. You know, I mean, you're used to living a public life. So my first thought was journal, document, let's put it on Facebook. I want to talk about it. I want to help people. And he said, wait. He said, you can't just jump out there with this. You got to give yourself time to process it. He said, you know, there will be points in this journey that you're weak enough that if they come at you with criticism, all the people that follow you on all the things, it's gonna hurt you worse than help. And so, I mean, that's a solid decision anyway, because that's what he told me to do. And then at some point, I just started talking about it. You know, I don't talk about the eating disorder much because, you know, it's kind of a stigmatized thing, and I feel like maybe I should more. But when you're putting your stuff out there, it always just makes me be like, man, you know, I mean, your kids really will. You've lost a parent. So you know that especially once they're gone, you can remember the things, you know, the things that they did that set an example that you will never forget. And that's what you've done for your kids.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the most important thing for me was that I found out there was hope.
Yeah.
You know, like hope was the biggest word for me through my sobriety, because it was like I found out there was a little bitty ounce of hope, and I went with it.
So how do you access God when you're going through all that? What did that look like for you?
I'm just talking to him all day. I mean, that was all there was to do. But I just have conversations with him throughout the day that, you know, is my praying. And of course, I pray every morning when I wake up, just grateful to be here, grateful for the life I live. I mean, never in a million years would I dreamed I'd be sober, have my dream home, have 3 healthy kids, a wonderful husband. You know, it's been a huge blessing, and I've always had these things. I just took them for granted.
Well, and so one of the things when you're talking about praying, and for me, I think prayer has become like a constant communication with God. Like I'm in the grocery store and I'm like, God, do I want Apple Jacks or Cheerios? I mean, like it's a constant just talking to him like he's my sidekick, you
Yeah.
know? And I find that helps me through a lot of the things too, because I've programmed my brain to like he's here. I'm
Yep.
talking to him. So I can't do that because I was just talking to God. Now that said, we've talked about before how sometimes talking to God is, God, this sucks. And people are like, oh, you can't say sucks to God. I'm
Yeah.
like, you would not even want to know the things I say to God.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So was that a part of your journey too? Just did you fight against things? Was there anger involved? You know?
No. No
Wow.
anger, just complete gratefulness.
Awesome.
Did you feel shame at all when you were going through the process?
No, I felt more embarrassed of who I was, like embarrassed of all the things I had done, just
Yeah.
just being drunk. I was just embarrassed that, my kids saw me
Yeah.
not there 100%. It says in the Bible, say sober and vigilant,
Yeah. I know. I think about that. Shame is probably the thing that I'm most familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about, if you look at it in putting on garments, the Bible talks about putting on like your robe of righteousness, your garment of praise. And sometimes those feel like they don't fit. And I feel like shame fits because it's custom made,
Yeah.
and it just feels familiar. It feels like something I can walk in, and it feels like something I deserve, quite honestly, because we have alcoholism in my family. My grandfather was an abusive alcoholic on my mom's side. And because of that, my mother has never touched it. Never touched it. And she kind of instilled that in us too, that we need to be very, very careful how we do alcohol because we have that tendency. But I think it's an addictive tendency that you have because alcohol may not be my thing, but fried chicken is, and we dress, I think, some addictions up to where I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, but they're almost sexy addictions.
Yeah.
This is done. This is, blah, blah, blah. And then you're just like, my God, go on a diet. I don't understand. You were talking about, an eating disorder. I have felt that shame because, I came out of the gate and I'm like, this is it. It's like you make up your mind. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to do this. You go public with it. You start losing weight. Everybody's like, you look so great. And you start feeling so great. And you just like, yes, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden you're in the kitchen behind the counter eating 3 oatmeal cream pies,
Right.
and you don't even know why. It's like, why am I doing this? Like, I hate that I'm doing this. And I hate that this is who I am. This is who I feel like I am. And I felt hopeless. I have felt like there's no way out of this. Thank God I've got a decent face because it's not going the rest of me. It's not going to work. So I think hearing somebody else say that they have been through it and for you even to be so vulnerable to the point of tears, it just kind of taps that hurt that I think all of us hide. There's something that all of us hide and all of us try to cover up and smooth over. It just looks different. And do you want to know something really messed up? There have been times me as somebody who likes to eat, I can't hide my addiction. There's only so much black I can wear, I've often wished I had another one.
Yeah.
That I could hide.
Yeah.
Well, if I was doing this, then nobody would know, and I could fake it a little better. You can't fake this, so it's a struggle, but shame is the biggest thing that I struggle with. And in my misunderstanding of who God is, I think I have come before him with this and feel like he is treating me like I treat me. And he's like, when are you going to get it together? When is enough, Traci? Instead of him being like I would be if it was somebody that I loved.
Yeah.
And being like, let me help you through this. Let me be with you every step of the way. There is no shame here. you're loved. And just trying to get into that mindset that God loves me better than I do.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to do.
One of the things that I found so interesting when I was going through my therapy is, of course, I'm thinking I'm going in here, oh, I've got some trauma. This is complex PTSD, blah, blah, blah. And they said spin-off eating disorder, and I heard it. But they had also, in some of the diagnostics, like if you were, I guess we can talk about this, if you were having more sex, you would be a sex addict. You know, you are a dry alcoholic for sex, basically. You know, you drink too much, you've got alcohol problems, you've definitely got food problems, you know, blah, blah, blah. And there was all this going on. And it was like, and I had done this years ago. I'd gone and done the same diagnostics because I had a moment where, gosh, I need help. And I had done that, and they'd come out with all this. And it was like going in for a cough and finding out you have lung cancer. So the first time I ever tried to get help, I ghosted them after that. I was not going back. So I lived for it was 2009 to 2018 before I went back and got help again. And so during all this, what they said, they actually called what I had popcorn addiction. And they were like, you will do whatever is going on in front of you, and you will do it compulsively to drown out the pain, you know, the things that hurt. And so when you're talking about shame and the sexy addictions, at one point around 2015 to 2017, I was addicted to the gym. I was doing, you know, high intensity interval training in the morning. I was training with Thomas Tuggle, who was the head of Melota, the police training academy, trained all the cops. I mean, hardcore stuff in the afternoon. And I looked better than I'd ever looked, but I was pissed off all the time. I was so cranky. I was so unhappy just because I was so tired and I was hungry all the time and all that. Mm-hmm. But I looked like $1,000,000, you know? And sometimes I say, gosh, I wish I could go back to that. No, I don't. I wasn't a very nice person then, you know? But you think about, how do we translate that? We do that stuff to deal with the hurt or the shame or the trauma or the pain, when really kind of what's happening here is God saying, you don't have to do all that. Let me be your addiction. Mm-hmm. Let me be the thing that fills you up and that covers all that, you know.
But I think there are more addictions than, and you know, I don't know anything. I'm not an expert when it comes to addictions. I don't know. But I do feel like you can be addicted to a lot of things that are not just drugs and alcohol or food or sex. You can also be addicted to likes and attention,
doom scrolling,
doing those things. Yeah, you just get addicted to it. And I think the bottom line is, and not to use the word addiction lightly, but if you're going to be obsessed or addicted with anything, God is such a safe place to be, you know, but I don't know, that sounds so weird to say it like that. But I think just the priority of finding out about grace and finding out about favor and finding out about what kind of God he is, because he is portrayed by sinners. And sometimes people hold people to standards that are unmeetable. And they think that's their view of God. And that's how God is. And he's not. I know, because I've talked about it before. I've worked in Christian radio. And there's like these unrealistic expectations that they expect you to hold. Even being on a worship team somewhere, you know, you have to sign a covenant above and beyond, because you can't be out doing anything and get caught less than, because then it's going to reflect negatively on what you're doing. I'm not saying those things aren't important. You absolutely need to toe the line. But I think sometimes we think God comes to us with a list of things and he's like, don't mess up. Don't mess up. And then the second you mess up, you try to hide it. It's the whole Garden of Eden thing all over again. Like, who told you were naked? You know, like, I'm naked, you know, and then what does God do? He clothes them, you know, he put clothes on them. And if you will go back and read the story in Genesis, when Eve said, well, Adam threw her under the bus and said, you know, ate the apple or whatever, he immediately, the first thing out of God's mouth was, he will crush your head. Like, he immediately dealt with the sin before he dealt with Adam and Eve. He immediately dealt with the serpent. He said, this is it for you. You're done at this point because you hurt my kids. You're done. This is the consequence of what you did, but let me help you through this. And then you've got Genesis through Revelation of him helping us through that. That is the hope of salvation and in the hope in anything that you struggle. God has dealt with the thing that is biting us, that is deceiving us. It's dealt with. He dealt with it first. Now he is growing us into who we need to be. And it's a process to do that. And it's a beautiful depiction in the garden because we're like, oh, when I get to heaven, boy, I'm going to talk to Eve, especially if it's our time of the month. And we're like, oh, I'm going to give her a what for, when we get up there. But if you look at the Bible and the way it is, immediately Jesus was there when God said, he will crush your head. That's it. And if you'll remember in the, you see like the Passion of the Christ in the movies, they always do the serpent and Jesus crushes his head. One of my favorite pictures was done by, I want to say a nun from Mississippi, but it shows a picture of Eve and she has her head down and she is just in shame and the serpent is wrapped around her leg and she's holding the apple. And Mary is standing in front of her with her hand on her face in a loving way, looking at her with compassion, and her heel is on his head of the serpent. Yeah, so Mary's it's pregnant. Like, here's the culmination. This is the sin. This is what happened. Here's the salvation of it. It's Jesus Christ.
That just is a whole example for my sobriety, to me, in my eyes and what I felt, because I asked God to give me grace. Like I thought he was mad at me.
Yeah. Yeah. Was he?
No. I thought I deserved to just have horrible things. Like when I got sober, I was like, I don't deserve all that I have, and he just keeps blessing me. Like he just showed me like his goodness. I thought he was mad or an angry God because I thought, look at the world today. How could he not be mad?
Right.
So I've talked on my other podcast and then another one about those nights that I always say it's when the shadow comes. And for me, it would be the nights that I was alone and drinking and I was letting the weight of all the trauma or the rejection or, just the different things that weigh us down. Sometimes it's just the not being seen, and we talk about being in the public eye. People see what they think that you are. And you realize like I could put something on Facebook and 10,000 people will see it, whatever, and they'll like it and whatever, but not one of them knows who I am. And so the nights that the shadow comes would be the nights that I'd be drinking, I'd be alone, and I would be like really into the fact that nobody was reaching out to me. I'm all by myself. Nobody loves me. And the truth was that really, nobody knew. I can't expect people to read my mind, but those are the nights that I believe that God sees us the most, drunk or not, high or not, if that's your thing, if you're acting out in some way that is just the way that you act out so that you can feel something, I feel like God is right there with you and not in a judgmental way, but in a like, oh, just turn to me.
Like I'm here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you read through the Bible, you will see that. If you go in and ask the Holy Spirit to reveal to you the nature of God and how he really is, he will show you that. Like the verses in Matthew, maybe Matthew 10, I know the very hairs on your head. Every morning I brush my hair, I think about that because I'm like, I hope you're keeping up because they are coming out, or I hope that you're doing. But he does that because he knows us so intimately. And he does that. When he was teaching on the side of the mountain, he said, if your son is hungry and asks you for a fish, will you give him a snake? If he wants bread, will you give him a stone? If you, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more the Father in heaven? And when you see Jesus actually interact with people, the story of the leper is so beautiful to me because the leper, when you had leprosy, it basically decayed your skin. You were walking death. And you had to be away from everything and everybody, no physical touch whatsoever. Like think COVID on steroids. You couldn't do anything. And when Jesus healed him, he touched him. The Bible says Jesus touched him and he was healed. Do you think he could have done it with his words? Absolutely. He had done things with his words up to that point, but it meant so much for that man to feel somebody touch him and not to feel unclean. And in the Jewish law, in the law of the Old Testament, when you are unclean and you touch something clean becomes unclean. But in the New Testament, when you are unclean and you touch the Christ who is clean, you become clean. That's the way the new law works. And we are still so busy saying, you're unclean. You're dealing with that. No, I don't want to deal with it. Right. The truth of the matter is, I am not unclean because I am under the cross. So when God looks at me, he looks at me through the mirror of Jesus Christ. And what was dirty is now clean because the clean came to set us free.
Traci makes us cry all the time.
Yeah.
Good Lord Almighty.
Traci gets to preaching and she makes us cry every time.
I'm a little Pentecostal. What
okay.
can I say?
I have chill bumps.
I'll take a lap. So, but I really am. And I'm trying to learn that for myself, because like I said, shame, party of one.
Well, when you think about it,
Party of two.
Yeah. I mean, okay, that's three of us now. When you think about it in the New Testament, you see the people that come to Jesus and the ones that came in like, so how can my brother and I sit on each side of you? And he's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? But the ones that come in like, if you're willing, you can make me clean. The humility, the shame. That's the thing that connects us because, and we've talked about it a million times. My big thing is like, when we get to heaven, there's not going to be judgment. That's already paid for. So everything that we screw up on, as long as we've got that penitent heart, it's done. It's gone. When we get there, it's going to be, who did we love? How did we love them? How did we show love? And so to me, I think when you are blessed enough to have that night where like this has to stop, I've got to find God again. When you've had that moment, I think that is a gift. And I don't know what you would say about that, but just the ability to be that low that all of a sudden you realize that all there is that matters is Christ.
Yeah, and for that to be my low,
Yeah.
anybody's low, some other people's lows look a lot different.
Yeah.
I'm just thankful that was my low and a wake up. And it was so loud.
Yeah. So had you had moments prior to that where you kind of had that feeling? Was this like a crescendo?
I was like, I really need to stop drinking. I need to cut back. And I tried to cut back without saying anything to anybody, but I didn't want anybody else to know that I knew there was a problem. I went for about 8 months of that, just miserableness and just getting to where, like you said, you were sitting there eating the oatmeal cookies. I was like literally F you and then taking a drink.
Yeah. Well, and I think, that's been one of my things, with food has been a thing, especially since my dad died. I was telling my therapist the other day, like I was really just beating myself up in therapy, talking about how I'd gained 30 pounds just in the last however long. And he said, that's normal, right? And I was like, what, for my age? And he's like, no, for losing your dad. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, grief. He said, this is average for grief. He said, obviously you'll want to take it off for your health, but whatever. And in that moment, there was grace. It was like in the moment, I was like, wow, okay, so it's not my fault, And sometimes I think that's what God does is he takes us by the face and says, it's just the sin and I've already paid for it. You know what? It's already okay. And so I do feel like that's something that we all deal with. And I'm looking at the comments here. There have been so many great comments. Ashley, you've got so much support, but I want to say something to Lisa. We see you. We've been there. And you're not, I know that it's so cliche and so empty to say you're not alone. But you're not the only one that feels that way. And I hope that there is somebody that can reach out to you. And if not, reach out to one of us and we'll help you find somebody. You're not by yourself. We've all been there. And so if you look at these other comments, like I said, Ashley, you have so much support. Traci, people always go with when you start preaching, everybody listens.
Holy Spirit. Yeah, and I appreciate you being so open and honest about this. And I don't want to say this is not a conversation we would have had with Barbie, but I feel like it's a little dirty, and Barbie's Barbie, and
we all
she's
know Barbie's
so great.
perfect.
God, I love Barbie so much,
Yeah.
but I feel like I have to mind my manners with her. She's the most loving person you will ever meet anywhere. So, we'll have to do this again with her because I would love to get her input on this. She's always got such great insight on stuff.
And before we get off here, I don't want to cut you off there.
No, you're fine.
I just want everybody to know that as hard as sobriety was for me and is still, the other side of it is so much better.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it is so good. I'm able to see my blessings. God has just poured blessings just overflowing on me. And there is hope. Like, if you just have that little ounce of hope, like the faith of a mustard seed, just keep going.
Yeah.
Because you're not alone and you can do this. And when you get there, you're going to take a deep breath and say, okay, I got through it.
Well, when you think about it too, addiction is kind of idolatry. It's saying, God, you're not important enough for me to stop this thing that is all encompassing, that is too important to me to quit, even though I know that you want me to. And so when you're willing to say, all right, you are all there is, this thing that I have loved in such an unhealthy way that has drowned you out, I'm going to let go of it and I'm going to turn to you. I think when you do that, there are so many blessings that follow because you have given up that thing to follow the love of your heart. And that's very significant.
Yes.
I do want to ask you a couple of questions, though, before we wrap it up. If you are talking to someone who is where you were, what piece of advice would you give them? What hope would you give them?
Don't tell yourself, I can never drink again. That's so overwhelming. Just say you need a break for now until you're ready, and so give yourself grace with time. Don't feel like it's a life-death sentence. It's something that once you're sober enough to realize, you're going to feel so much better. Your brain is so much clearer. Your thoughts are clear. You're happier, so much happier. You feel a sense of pride because you've accomplished something that a lot of people can't. And it's like that feeling of just leaving the gym or after having a really long hike and things like that. Like, that's the feeling you have all the time. For me, anyways.
Yeah. So what would you say to a family member that loves somebody who is going through this?
To be compassionate and try to learn exactly what would work best for that person and come at them from a way of love and not judgment.
And not anger either,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes, I know there have been times where I've started conversations with people and I didn't even realize I was mad about it
Yeah.
until we got into it. And then I'm like, why am I yelling about this? Why am I yelling? But I think, too, to check yourself, too, emotionally, because don't let those bleed over into
Yeah.
those conversations.
Yeah. And that's not the person you love right there in front of you. They'll
Right.
be back one day, but just try to think of it that way,
Yeah, it's good advice. Thank you for being
Yeah.
so transparent.
Yeah. Thanks for having
and
me.
for coming.
Well, and we're going to address a little bit more of this in our Patreon. So if you are not a Patreon subscriber, we will put the link in the comments. We're going to talk to Ashley a little bit more about this. And for me, what's important to say here is that there is such a release in learning to love yourself. And we'll tell you a little hack that my therapist gave me to help me find that in the Patreon. So thank you guys for watching. Barbie will be back next time.
Yes, you will.
And everyone, shower Ashley with love for showing up today
Yes.
for us. We'll see you soon.